Hello everyone, on today's episode we're going to talk about nature and us from an Eastern perspective. Hello everyone, we're going to talk about nature. I know you know about nature, I know you know about you, but we're talking about it from an Eastern perspective because in the West we're taught that nature, we're taught a very specific thing about nature, and unfortunately it's led to a lot of destruction of some beautiful natural elements around us. In the hometown I live, many of our natural dunes and ecosystems have been destroyed because of the way the Western focus on money over nature. And ultimately that comes from just a misunderstanding of nature. I think we all know that a waterfall is priceless. You can't put a price on it, and it's better than an artificial waterfall. But there's something broken before we get to that point that makes us put a value on nature, and I want to talk about that. And the best way to do it is to look at how other people have looked at this in the past and get a different perspective. So as always, I'm going to begin with a quote on the subject, and that quote is, "The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless." Alan Watts. Now, this is so true. Look around you. What's not moving? It's probably lifeless. What's moving and changing? It's probably life. And understanding that nature and us, we're all about change, we're all about difference, we're all about moving and connecting and flux and energy. And then when we take that away and we try and build these solid brick buildings and cover over nature and get rid of the parts we don't like, ultimately what we're doing is creating lifelessness within life, which creates major problems. So my personal story was, I had very little interaction with nature up until about 5 years ago. I worked in a box office. I worked in drove a boxcar home. Everything was in boxes and elevators and planes, and really nature for me was just something that you saw on documentary channels every once in a while, or you might look out your window. It wasn't part of me. I never saw it as being integrated to my life. I would just sleep, go to work, watch some TV, then go to sleep, go to work, watch some TV, go to dinner. Sound anything like your life? We've all had these moments, I think, where we get into these rituals where nature is non-existent in our lives, and that's a real problem because our entire brain and bodies were designed to interact with nature. We didn't develop fingers for keyboards, we developed fingers in order to hold pieces of rock that we could shape into tools and things like that. So it's really important that we look at the way that things integrate with nature, and the best way, once again, look at the Eastern perspective. So on the screen now you're going to see a figure, and it's a classic way of looking at nature from an Eastern perspective. So what we see here is that it's nature. It's one of those beautiful sort of Eastern Zen sort of paintings, and what you notice is that nature always takes the forefront of the image. So you can see the people are tiny and minuscule. That's their place in nature. And this is a classical Eastern painting from maybe 200-300 years ago. Now I'm going to put a Western painting on the screen, and you'll see like a Western painting, and these are some of our more famous Western paintings. They are generally portraits saying man over nature, and there's no nature in the background. Alternatively, we never look at the big picture. We get so reductionist, like scientists saying these are flowers, this is how flowers work, and that's it, never integrating it into the big picture. So I guess the biggest difference we can see is that in Eastern thought, humans are completely integrated to nature and almost not subservient, but a small part of nature. Whereas in the Western tradition, we hold it over nature. We get you, we've got science, we get this stuff, we're smarter than you, and we'd hold ourselves above nature. Western attitudes, because of this, we've gone on to the conquest of nature. We talk about the conquest of space. Edmund Hillary said, I climbed that mountain because it was there. We want to beat nature, and not realizing that, we are so connected to it, you can't beat yourself. We are one with it. It's almost a fight with the environment. And the way we treat the environment inevitably leads to mistrust of our true nature, which is sin. I was at the beach recently, and it's not a topless beach, but there were two girls who had taken their tops off, and immediately an older couple who had decided that wasn't the right thing to do, and they were staring and making like remarks about these two girls. And I'm thinking, whoa, this is crazy. And I said to my friend, I said, this is the generation, I don't blame them personally, but this is the same generation of individuals who didn't believe Aboriginals deserved the vote, who committed incredible, their generation incredible war crimes around the world. Part of that generation was involved in Holocaust, and They believe the biggest problem today is these two girls who have taken their tops off to reveal their beautiful bodies, which were created by nature. It's a classic example of how the West has just lost it, you know, like we'll allow, you know, we'll allow cigarettes to be sold and to kill children to get taxes for the government and turn a blind eye, but if someone takes their top off, that's the end of society. And that's a classic example just recently of mistrusting our true nature. Being naked and being free should never, ever, people should never be made to feel bad about that. The amount of stress and sin that comes into the world because of our reductionist concept of nature is unfortunately what creates so many problems around the world. So what happens when we start second-guessing nature? Well, we start second-guessing is anxiety. And our true nature, there is no anxiety, we just act. You can't imagine like hunters you know, out in the wild or, you know, maybe within a tribal community stressing and having anxiety. They were just doing, they were being, you know. We've created anxiety out of the way people see us. And because we don't see ourselves as nature, we see ourselves as a belief system or a set of rules, that's when anxiety comes in. So how do we sort of, you know, tap into this? Well, the concept of being like water, the path of least resistance. When you see water flow, it has this very interesting aspect. Water is called the universal dissolver. It will dissolve any substance over time, and it also finds the path of least resistance. So it can crash, it can destroy rock, or it can go around rock. And a great experiment to do with kids is to just, or even as an adult, is to pour some water down a sort of gradient and watch that water, and as it interacts with rocks, it just seamlessly continues to go. And it just finds the path of least resistance because it's not thinking, first of all, and it's interacting with its environment naturally without trying to beat it. What do we do as humans? We build these incredible bridges that sometimes fail and, you know, cause the loss of life because we are so unwilling to trust the way that nature works. And we see this when we dam large canals and we create all sorts of environmental challenges and long-term problems. Now, another key concept I want to bring on this is this concept that, you know, we are smarter than nature. In Australia, we have a thing called the cane toad. Now, the cane toad is a non-Australian animal, and there were scientists. We had sugarcane crops in northern Australia, which were very profitable and lucrative for large corporations, and the taxes that came to the government. So the government decided to step in when a bug was eating all the cane. So what they decided to do was to create all these poisons and to kill the bug. The poisons just contaminated the cane and didn't kill the bugs until a researcher thought, you know what, I'm going to grab a cane frog, a cane toad from another area of the world, and I'm going to bring it to Australia, and we're going to put it into that nature without thinking about the consequences, without thinking of how that cane toad came about in its own nature. I'm going to put it there. What happened? Well, the cane toads didn't eat the bugs, but they ate everything else. They ate all the Australian native frogs, they ate all sorts of things, and now they're in plague. You know, if you go to northern Queensland at night, all we can hear is the cane toads. They've taken over that entire area because we just don't understand the impact we can have on nature by not thinking. So, if you can't trust your true nature, which is your environment and nature, then you don't know what to trust. And ultimately you fall susceptible to all sorts of crazy ideas and sort of mental concepts. You see all these people joining ISIS at the moment, then you see all these people voting for, you know, crazy politicians and stuff. It's because they don't know what to do. They're so gullible. And you can see this around the world. You can see people falling for ab rollers and all sorts of stuff because there is no trust that the environment will look after us. So we're always trying to think about the next thing that's going to keep us safe. So nature is a process, just like our lives are a process, and everything we do in our lives has karmic effect forward and backwards, and nature is very much like this. It's a process, so every time we impact on nature without trusting it, we create problems in the future that we are very unaware of. So we are constantly inextricably linked to nature. In fact, the universe, if you believe particle physics, started the size of a pea. We were in there, our atoms that are in you right now are in there, that exploded, and then we lost touch with our true selves. It's kind of like Alan Watts would explain when he said if you took a bucket of paint and threw it at a wall, like the Big Bang, that's very much like the Big Bang, it starts and then goes out as an explosion and creates this incredible intricate pattern. We eventually, the Milky Way is a little swirl on the edge of that paint blot, and eventually it's been so long we don't think we're a piece of paint. We think we're independent of that paint, not realizing that Big Bang is a process that's still evolving. Getting back to nature for me was one of the keys to becoming happy. Understanding nature is not something to be beaten, but something to embrace. Understanding you are nature, and understanding that people who try to put shame on others for being in their natural element are ultimately coming from a place of anxiety and hatred for themselves. It really allows you to be liberated, to work on your body, to become healthy and become in tune with the natural elements of life. It's something to think about. I can't wait to see you tomorrow.